My son Michael texted me happy birthday 3 days late, asking why I hadn't reminded him. I blocked his access to the family trust fund that same afternoon. By midnight, he'd called 47 times begging me to answer the phone. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. Let me tell you how we got to this point. Because the devil's in the details. And honey, this devil has some serious bite. 3 months earlier, I was what you might call a devoted mother. Scratch that. I was a doormat with a checkbook. At 68, I'd been playing ATM to my adult children for so long, I'd forgotten what it felt like to say no. My late husband, Robert, left us very comfortable when he passed 5 years ago. Comfortable enough that our son Michael and his wife Nora could afford their dream house in Westchester, their kids' private school tuition, and Nora's shopping addiction. I lived quietly in my Park Avenue apartment, the same one Robert and I had shared for 30 years. Every Sunday, I'd drive out to Westchester for family dinner. Every holiday, I'd write another check. Every birthday, wedding, or graduation, I'd open my purse without question. I thought I was being generous. Turns out, I was being stupid. The warning signs had been there for months. Michael stopped calling unless he needed something. Nora would barely make eye contact during our visits, too busy scrolling through her phone or coordinating with contractors for their latest home renovation. My grandchildren, Emma and Jake, 12 and 14 respectively, had been polite but distant, treating me like an obligation rather than family. But I chose to ignore it all, because I believed in family loyalty. I believed love meant sacrifice. I believed that if I just gave enough, did enough, they'd appreciate me. What a fool I was. The day before my birthday, I'd gone shopping for ingredients to make Michael's favorite chocolate cake, the same one I'd made for him every year since he was 5. I spent 2 hours in the kitchen, my arthritic hands struggling with the mixing bowl, but determined to create something special, something that would remind him how much his mother loved him. I texted him that morning, a simple message. "Cake's ready whenever you want to stop by." No response. I waited all day. Every time a car passed outside, I'd peek through the curtains, hoping to see his silver BMW pulling up. Every time my phone buzzed, my heart would leap, thinking it was him calling to apologize for being late. But the hours ticked by. Morning became afternoon. Afternoon became evening, and evening became another sleepless night. The chocolate cake sat untouched on my kitchen counter for 3 days, growing stale like my hope. On the 4th day, I threw it away, fighting back tears as I scraped Robert's favorite recipe into the garbage disposal. That's when reality hit me like a freight train. My own son had forgotten my birthday. Not delayed, not postponed, completely forgotten. I'd spent decades putting everyone else's needs first. When Michael got divorced from his first wife, I'd helped with his legal fees. When he remarried Nora, I'd paid for their honeymoon to Italy. When they couldn't afford their house down payment, I'd written a check for $200,000 without blinking. And this was my thanks. Radio silence on the one day that should have mattered. I was pouring myself a second cup of coffee when my phone finally buzzed. Michael's name appeared on the screen, and for a moment, my traitorous heart skipped with hope. "Hey, Mom, happy birthday. Sorry it's a few days late. You should have reminded me about it." I should have reminded him, as if it were my responsibility to ensure my own child remembered the day I'd given birth to him. I stared at that message for a full 10 minutes, reading it over and over, feeling something cold and hard settle in my chest where warmth used to live. Should have reminded him, like I was some random acquaintance instead of the woman who'd carried him for 9 months, who'd walked the floors with him during colicky nights, who'd worked 2 jobs to pay for his college education. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. The old Dorothy would have typed back something gracious. "Oh, don't worry about it, sweetheart. These things happen." The old Dorothy would have made excuses for him, probably invited him over for dinner to make up for his oversight, but the old Dorothy had died somewhere between throwing away that birthday cake and reading his pathetic non-apology. Instead, I called my lawyer. "Dorothy!" James Richardson had been our family attorney for 15 years. "What can I do for you today?" "I need to make some changes to the family trust arrangements," I said, my voice steadier than I'd expected. "How quickly can you restructure the distributions?" There was a pause. James knew about the monthly payments to Michael's family. He'd helped set up the automatic transfers when Robert died. May I ask what prompted this decision? I almost laughed. What prompted it? 20 years of taking me for granted. A birthday forgotten like yesterday's trash. A text message that treated me like an inconvenience. Let's just say I've had a change of perspective about family obligations. James worked faster than I'd expected. By Tuesday afternoon, all automatic payments to Michael's accounts had been suspended. The monthly transfer that covered their mortgage, car payments, and Nora's credit cards simply stopped flowing. I didn't tell them. Why should I? They'd never asked where the money came from, never questioned whether I could afford their lifestyle, never once said thank you for bankrolling their American dream. Instead, I waited. And you know what? The wait was almost enjoyable. For the first time in years, I felt like I held the cards instead of constantly folding. It took exactly 6 days. I was reading in my favorite armchair, enjoying a cup of tea and the blessed silence of my own thoughts, when my phone started ringing. Michael's name flashed on the screen. I let it go to voicemail. He called again, immediately, then again. By the 4th call, I was genuinely amused. Where was all this urgency when it came to remembering my birthday? The 5th call came with a text. Mom, please pick up. There's been some kind of mistake with the bank. Mistake. That's what he called it, when the gravy train finally derailed. I poured myself a glass of wine and settled back into my chair. Let him sweat a little. Lord knows I'd sweated plenty over the years, wondering if I was doing enough, giving enough, being enough for children who couldn't be bothered to remember when I was born. The calls kept coming. 7, 8, 9, each one more frantic than the last. By the time I went to bed that night, Michael had called 23 times. Nora had called 6. They'd left a total of 14 voicemails, each one more panicked than the last. The first few had been confused. Mom, I think there's been a banking error. Can you call me back? By message 7, confusion had turned to worry. Mom, please call us. The mortgage payment bounced, and we need to figure out what happened. By message 12, worry had become panic. Dorothy, this is Nora. We need to talk, now. The last message, left at 11:47 p.m., was pure desperation. Michael's voice was strained, exhausted. Mom, I know you're angry about the birthday thing. I'm sorry, okay? But this isn't funny anymore. Please call me back. We need that money. We need that money. Not we miss you, or we're worried about you, or we love you. Just we need that money. Perfect. After all these years, he'd finally told me the truth about what I meant to them. I turned off my phone and slept better than I had in months. The next morning brought a new experience, the sound of someone pounding on my apartment door at 7:30 a.m. I took my time getting dressed, choosing a comfortable sweater and my favorite pearls. If Michael and Nora wanted to have this conversation, I was going to look dignified while I had it. Through the peephole, I could see them both standing in the hallway, looking harried and desperate. Michael was pacing, running his hands through his hair. Nora stood rigid, clutching her designer purse like a weapon. I opened the door with a smile. Good morning, dear. What brings you by so early? Michael pushed past me into the apartment, Nora following with a face like thunder. Mom, what the hell is going on? Michael demanded. The bank says all transfers from your accounts have been stopped. Our mortgage payment bounced, our car payments bounced, and Nora's credit cards have been declined. I closed the door and turned to face them. They both looked panicked, overwhelmed, like children who'd suddenly discovered the world didn't revolve around them. Would you like some coffee? I asked pleasantly. We don't want coffee, Nora snapped. We want to know why you've cut off our money without warning. Our money. How interesting that Nora thought money I'd earned, inherited and managed, was somehow theirs by right. I walked to the kitchen and began preparing coffee anyway, taking my time measuring grounds and adding water. Let them watch me move at my own pace for once. I've been doing some thinking lately, I said conversationally, about family dynamics, financial responsibility, basic human courtesy. You know, things like remembering important dates. Michael had the grace to look uncomfortable. Mom, if this is about your birthday, oh, it's about so much more than that, I interrupted, turning to face them. Your birthday was just the final straw. Do you know how long it's been since either of you asked how I'm doing? How I'm feeling? Whether I need anything? They stared at me blankly. I'll tell you, I continued. 14 months. 14 months since either of you treated me like a person instead of a bank account. Nora stepped forward, her face flushed with anger. That's not fair! We invite you to family dinners. You invite me to dinners where you ignore me while discussing renovations I'm paying for, vacations I'm funding, and private schools I'm subsidizing. I'm not a guest at those dinners, Nora. I'm the entertainment. The crazy old lady you tolerate because she writes the checks. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. Michael sat down heavily on my couch, the fight going out of him as he realized I wasn't bluffing. Mom, he said quietly, I know we haven't been the most attentive lately, but cutting us off completely? That's extreme. Extreme. Coming from someone who'd forgotten his mother's birthday and then blamed her for not reminding him. Is it extreme, Michael? Let me put this in perspective for you. I walked to my desk and pulled out a folder I'd prepared. In the 5 years since your father died, I've given your family $847,000 in direct payments alone. That's not including gifts, holidays, special occasions, or the house down payment. Just monthly support payments. Nearly $1 million in cash transfers. Nora went pale. I don't think she'd ever added it up. In return, I continued, you've visited me exactly 32 times. That comes out to roughly $26,000 per visit. I've attended 14 family events where I was treated like an obligation. That's about $60,000 per event where I was made to feel unwelcome. Michael opened his mouth to protest, but I held up my hand. I'm not finished. You've called me to ask about my health or well-being exactly 7 times in 5 years. 7 times, Michael. But you've called to ask for money 43 times. The numbers hung in the air like an indictment, because that's exactly what they were. The financial arrangement we had was based on family love and mutual respect, I said calmly. When you stopped providing love and respect, I stopped providing money. It's simple economics. Nora found her voice. You can't just abandon your family because your feelings got hurt. I looked at her. This woman who'd never worked a day since marrying my son, who'd spent my money on designer handbags while barely acknowledging my existence. I'm not abandoning anyone, Nora. I'm simply requiring the same courtesy I've always shown you. Acknowledgement, appreciation, basic human decency. If that's too much to ask, then perhaps we need to reevaluate what family means. Michael leaned forward, his voice taking on the wheedling tone he'd used as a child when he wanted something. Mom, we can do better. We can call more, visit more. But we need that money. The house, the kids' schools, everything depends on it. Everything you've built depends on my generosity, I corrected. And generosity requires gratitude, not entitlement. I stood up, smoothing down my sweater. I'm going to make you both a proposition. I walked to the window, looking out at the bustling street below. From up here, people looked like ants, scurrying around with their urgent little purposes, much like my son and daughter-in-law were about to do. Here's my offer, I said, turning back to face them. You have 30 days to show me that I'm more than just a funding source to this family, not through desperate phone calls or panicked visits, but through genuine interest in my life as a person. Michael and Nora exchanged glances, and I could see the calculation in their eyes. They were already strategizing, figuring out how to manipulate me back into opening my checkbook. What exactly does that mean? Nora asked carefully. It means treating me like family instead of like an ATM. It means remembering important dates without being reminded. It means asking about my day, my health, my interests, my feelings. It means including me in conversations instead of talking around me. It means showing basic respect for the woman who's been subsidizing your lifestyle. I sat back down, enjoying the way they hung on my every word for once. If, after 30 days, I feel valued as a person rather than just a provider, we can discuss resuming some level of financial support. Not the blank check arrangement you've enjoyed, but something more reasonable. Michael's face brightened with hope. We can do that, Mom. Absolutely. But, I continued, holding up one finger, if I detect even the slightest hint of manipulation, if this feels like a performance designed to get my money flowing again, the offer is permanently withdrawn. And I do mean permanently. Nora's mask of composure was slipping. What are we supposed to do in the meantime? We have mortgage payments, car payments, the kids' tuition. The same thing millions of families do, I said pleasantly. You'll figure it out. Michael makes a decent salary. You could get a job. You could downsize the house, change schools, sell one of your cars. You know, all the things people do when they live within their actual means. The word job seemed to physically pain Nora. She'd married Michael straight out of college and had never worked. The idea of actual employment was apparently terrifying. "You're being incredibly cruel," she whispered. "Am I? Or am I finally being honest about what this relationship has become?" I stood up again, signaling that our meeting was over. 30 days, I repeated, starting now. And remember, I've had 5 years to perfect the art of detecting genuine emotion versus calculated performance. Don't insult my intelligence by trying to fake your way through this. They left without another word, Nora practically trembling with fury, Michael looking stunned and lost. After they were gone, I poured myself that glass of wine I'd been looking forward to and settled back into my chair. The next 30 days were going to be very interesting indeed. The phone calls started the very next day. Not frantic demands this time, but carefully crafted performances that would have impressed Broadway directors. "Hi, Mom. Just calling to see how you're feeling today." Michael's voice was sugar-sweet through the receiver. I realized we never ask about your health enough. I was standing in my kitchen, preparing lunch, and I nearly laughed out loud. In 5 years, this man had never once called to ask about my health unless he was making small talk before asking for money. "I'm fine, Michael. How thoughtful of you to ask." "Great. And hey, I was thinking maybe we could have lunch this week. Just the two of us. Like old times." Old times. When exactly had we ever had regular lunch dates? I couldn't remember a single instance of Michael suggesting we spend time together without Nora or the children as buffers. "That sounds lovely," I said, curious to see how far they'd take this charade. "Perfect. Oh, and Mom? I've been thinking about what you said yesterday, about not appreciating you enough. You're absolutely right. We've been terrible family members." The script was almost insulting in its transparency, but I played along. "I appreciate you saying that, dear." After he hung up, I checked my watch. 47 minutes later, Emma called. My 14-year-old granddaughter had never initiated a phone conversation with me in her life. Our interactions were limited to polite responses when I asked her direct questions during family dinners. "Hi, Grandma Dorothy. I just wanted to call and tell you about my day at school." The words sounded rehearsed, like she was reading from cue cards. Poor child. Her parents had obviously coached her on what to say. "That's wonderful, Emma. Tell me all about it." She launched into a detailed account of her classes, her friends, her teachers. Everything was wonderful and amazing, and she just couldn't wait to share it all with her beloved grandmother. It broke my heart, honestly. Not because she was lying, but because this forced conversation revealed how little we actually knew each other. Her parents had weaponized their own daughter, turning her into a pawn in their desperate game. When she finished her performance, I said gently, "Emma, sweetheart, you don't have to do this." "Do what, Grandma?" "Pretend to be interested in talking to me because your parents told you to call." There was silence on the other end. When she spoke again, her voice was smaller, more genuine. "Dad said you were mad at us, that maybe you wouldn't be our grandma anymore if we didn't try harder. Those bastards. They'd terrified their own children to manipulate me. Emma, listen to me carefully. I will always be your grandmother, no matter what happens between me and your parents. That will never change. Do you understand?" "Yes, Grandma." "Good. Now, do you actually want to talk to me, or would you rather go do whatever 14-year-olds do when they're not being forced to call their grandmothers?" She giggled, and for the first time, she sounded like herself. "Can I go? I have homework." "Of course you can go. I love you, Emma." "Love you too, Grandma." The manipulation had officially begun. Day 5 brought flowers. An enormous arrangement of white roses and lilies arrived at my door with a card that read, "Thinking of you always. Love, Michael and Nora." I'd never received flowers from them before. Not for my birthday, not for Mother's Day, not even when Robert died. But now, when they needed my money, suddenly they were thoughtful enough to spend $200 on an ostentatious display. I put the flowers on my dining room table and waited for the follow-up call. It came within an hour. "Hi, Mom. Did you get our little surprise?" Nora's voice was artificially bright. "They're lovely, thank you. I just wanted you to know how much we appreciate everything you've done for us over the years. I know I haven't always been the best daughter-in-law, but I want to change that." The best daughter-in-law. This woman had barely spoken to me in 2 years, except to make snide comments about my clothes or my cooking. That's very kind of you to say, Nora. I was wondering if you'd like to go shopping this weekend. Maybe get our nails done. Have a girls' day. A girls' day. With the woman who once told Michael I was too needy when I'd called to check on them during a hurricane. I'll think about it, I said. Day 8 brought a handwritten letter from Jake, my 12-year-old grandson. His usually terrible handwriting was surprisingly neat, suggesting he'd been made to write multiple drafts. Dear Grandma Dorothy, it began. I have been thinking about how awesome you are, and how I don't tell you enough. You are the best grandma in the world, and I love you so much. I hope we can hang out more and do fun things together. Love, Jake. The letter was sweet, but it reeked of parental coaching. Jake had never used the word awesome in his life, and he'd certainly never expressed any desire to hang out with me. I called Michael that evening. The letter from Jake was very touching, I said. Oh, that was all his idea. He's been feeling really bad about not being closer to you. Michael. Yes? Stop lying to me. I know you coached him to write that letter, just like you coached Emma to call me. Silence. Mom, I don't know what you... Stop. Just stop. If you want to rebuild our relationship, it has to be based on honesty, not performances, not manipulations, not scripted phone calls from confused children. We're trying to show you we care. You're trying to show me you can follow a script when money is on the line. There's a difference. I hung up feeling exhausted. This wasn't working the way I'd hoped. Instead of genuine change, I was watching them dig themselves deeper into deception. But I'd given them 30 days, and I was a woman of my word. I just wasn't sure how much more amateur theater I could stomach. 2 weeks into their performance, I discovered something that changed everything. I was having lunch with my friend Margaret at our favorite cafe when she mentioned seeing Nora at the country club. She was telling everyone about your mental breakdown, Margaret said, her voice carefully neutral. Said you'd been acting erratic since Robert died, making impulsive financial decisions. The coffee cup rattled against the saucer as I set it down. She said, what? Apparently, you've become difficult to manage, and they're considering having you evaluated for competency issues. The words hit me like a physical blow. While they were sending me flowers and love letters, they were simultaneously laying the groundwork to have me declared mentally unfit. Margaret, are you absolutely certain? Dorothy, I've known you for 30 years. You're the most sharp-minded person I know. But Nora was very convincing. She had several women nodding along sympathetically. I spent the rest of lunch in a daze. When I got home, I immediately called James Richardson. James, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Has anyone contacted you asking about my mental state or financial competency? There was a long pause. Dorothy, I probably shouldn't tell you this, but Michael called last week. He said he was concerned about some unusual financial decisions you'd been making. He asked about the process for having someone's competency evaluated. My hands started shaking. What did you tell him? I told him that you were completely competent, and that any such evaluation would be a waste of everyone's time. But Dorothy, the fact that he asked, I know what it means. After I hung up, I sat in my chair and stared at those white roses they'd sent. Every petal suddenly looked like a lie. Every fragrant bloom was part of an elaborate deception designed to make me look unstable when I inevitably rejected their fake affection. They weren't trying to win me back. They were building a case against me. I thought about all the carefully orchestrated phone calls, the sudden interest in my well-being, the flowers, the children's letters. It wasn't love. It was evidence. Evidence that they were caring, attentive family members dealing with a difficult, irrational old woman who'd cut them off without cause. The revelation should have crushed me. Instead, it filled me with a cold, calculating fury that I hadn't felt since I was young enough to fight dirty. They wanted to play games? Fine. But they'd forgotten that I'd been playing this game a lot longer than they had, and I was much, much better at it. I spent the weekend planning. By Monday morning, I knew exactly what I needed to do. First, I called James and scheduled an appointment for a complete mental competency evaluation with the most respected neuropsychologist in Manhattan. Dorothy, you don't need to, James started. Yes, I do. When this is over, I want documentation that I'm of sound mind and capable of making my own financial decisions. Next, I called Michael. Mom, How are you feeling today? The fake cheerfulness was starting to grate. Actually, Michael, I've been doing some thinking about our conversation, and I've decided you're right. About what? About resuming the financial arrangements. I've been too harsh, too emotional. I miss our family dinners. I miss being part of your lives. I want to fix this. The relief in his voice was palpable. Mom, that's wonderful. I knew you'd come around. You're such a loving, generous person. I want to have dinner this Friday, all of us, including Emma and Jake. I want to apologize properly and discuss how we move forward. Of course, Nora will be so relieved. She's been worried sick about you. I'll bet she has. That afternoon, I made another call. To a private investigator named Patricia Chen, someone James had recommended for discreet family matters years ago when Robert was having business partner issues. Mrs. Patterson, I need to know everything about my son and daughter-in-law's financial situation. Bank accounts, credit cards, debts, assets, spending patterns. I also need you to check if they've been consulting with any attorneys recently. Something feels off about their behavior. Patricia had already done preliminary work on my family during Robert's business disputes, so she had existing files and contacts. Her updated report arrived Thursday morning, and it was even worse than I'd suspected. Michael and Nora were drowning. Beyond the obvious expenses I'd been covering, they had racked up massive credit card debt. Nora's shopping addiction was far more severe than I'd realized. They owed money on both cars, had taken out a second mortgage on the house, and were behind on Jake's tuition payments. But the most interesting discovery was a bank account I didn't know about. An account where they'd been depositing and immediately withdrawing large sums of money for the past 2 years. My money. They'd been taking the funds I provided and moving them through a separate account before paying their bills. Why would they do that unless they were planning something? The answer came in the form of financial planning documents Patricia had uncovered. Documents showing that they'd been working with a lawyer to establish guardianship over my assets since Robert's death. It started right after the funeral, when I'd been grief-stricken and making large financial gifts to cope with my loss. They'd been planning this for 5 years. The gradual distance, the increasing demands, the casual cruelty. It was all designed to establish a pattern, the generous but unstable widow who needed protection from her own poor judgment. I'd thought I was teaching them a lesson about respect and gratitude. They'd been playing a much more dangerous game. Friday dinner was going to be very interesting indeed. Friday evening, I sat at the head of Michael and Nora's dining room table, watching them perform their greatest hits of fake affection. They'd gone all out for this dinner, using their good china and even lighting candles. Emma and Jake seemed genuinely happy to see me, which was the only real bright spot in this elaborate production. Mom, you look wonderful, Nora gushed, though her smile never reached her eyes. That dress is so flattering. I was wearing the same black dress I'd worn to Robert's funeral. She'd complimented it before, back when she was still pretending to like me. Thank you, dear. You look lovely as always. Michael raised his wine glass. I want to make a toast to family, to forgiveness, and to Mom for being the most generous, loving woman we know. To Grandma, Emma and Jake chorused, and their enthusiasm was genuine enough to make my heart ache. We made it through the appetizer and main course with their performance in full swing. They asked about my health, my hobbies, my plans for the holidays. They laughed at my stories, complimented my jewelry, and treated me like the beloved family matriarch they'd never actually considered me to be. It was masterful, really. If I hadn't known what I knew, I might have been fooled. After dessert, I stood up. I have something I want to say to all of you. Michael and Nora leaned forward expectantly, probably anticipating my tearful apology and promise to restore their funding. These past 2 weeks have been so enlightening. Michael, your sudden interest in my daily health has been touching. Nora, your invitation to go shopping was so thoughtful. And children, your letters and phone calls have meant the world to me. They were practically glowing with anticipation. It's made me realize how much I've been missing, how important it is to be truly involved in each other's lives. Michael nodded eagerly. Exactly. That's exactly what we've been trying to show you. Which is why I've decided to be much more involved in managing all of our affairs. I met with James Richardson yesterday to review the family trust documents. Nora's smile flickered slightly. I also had a complete psychological evaluation done. Just to make sure I'm making sound decisions. Clean bill of mental health, as it turns out. Michael's face went pale. And I hired a private investigator to do a thorough financial review. Very thorough. The silence in the room was deafening. I reached into my purse and pulled out Patricia's report, setting it on the table between us. Did you know it's illegal to establish financial guardianship over someone through fraudulent means? James was quite concerned when he reviewed your planning documents. Nora stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. I don't know what you think you found, but I found 5 years' worth of evidence that you've been systematically setting me up to be declared incompetent so you could control my assets permanently. The separate bank account, the guardianship paperwork, the witnesses you've been cultivating who can testify to my erratic behavior. Michael's voice was barely a whisper. Mom, it's not what it looks like. Really, because it looks like fraud. It looks like elder abuse. It looks like 2 people who decided it was easier to steal from me than to earn their own living. Emma and Jake were staring at their parents with horrified expressions. Here's what's going to happen, I continued calmly. You're going to pack up and move out of this house by the end of the month. The house I bought, by the way, which means I can evict you whenever I choose. You're going to get jobs, real jobs, and start living within your means. And if you ever attempt to contact me again, I'll file criminal charges. James assures me we have more than enough evidence. I walked to the door, then turned back one final time. Oh, and I'm changing my will. The entire estate goes to charity now. Congratulations, Michael. Your greed just cost you $47 million. The same $47 million you thought you could steal through fraudulent guardianship. The drive home was peaceful. For the first time in years, I felt truly free. Some lessons cost more than others. But watching my son learn that respect isn't optional was worth every penny. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.